She kissed me before I could say goodbye, and that was how I knew I was about to lose her. It was August of 1969, and the train platform in our little Ohio town smelled of hot metal and coal dust. The evening air hung thick with summer heat, cicadas humming in the trees beyond the tracks. Folks stood scattered under the dim yellow lights, clutching suitcases and paper cups of coffee, pretending departures were ordinary things. But there was nothing ordinary about the way Anna held my face in her hands that night. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. The train whistle blew low and mournful in the distance. I had a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and a bus ticket in my pocket that would carry me first to Chicago, then farther west to a factory job I'd convinced myself I needed. Not for money alone, though money was part of it. My father's heart had started failing that spring, and the medical bills were stacked in a neat pile on the kitchen counter like quiet accusations. Our town's plant had cut shifts again. The future here felt narrow. Anna's kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining but steady. "If you leave now," she said, "you might not come back the same." I almost laughed. Nobody comes back the same from anywhere. But the truth was, I was afraid that if I stayed, I'd grow smaller than the man she believed I could be. I met Anna 2 summers earlier at a church social behind First Baptist. Someone had strung white lights between the oak trees, and the women brought casseroles in glass dishes that fogged up in the humidity. A local boy named Frankie set up his record player on a folding table, and slow songs drifted across the grass while lightning bugs rose out of the fields like sparks. She wore a pale blue dress that moved when she walked, like it was made for dancing even if she wasn't. I'd seen her before at the diner on Main, sitting by the window with a cherry Coke and a paperback novel, but that night she looked up and caught me staring. "You're blocking the lemonade," she said, smiling just enough to let me know she wasn't angry. I stepped aside, flustered, and somehow found myself asking her to dance. Her hand in mine felt certain. Warm. As if she'd already decided something about me. For a year, we built our own small world. Friday nights at the drive-in theater on Route 22, where we'd park my father's old pickup near the back and pretend to watch the screen while the radio speaker crackled on the window. Sunday mornings in separate pews, stealing glances during hymns. Late evenings parked by Miller's gas station after it closed, the neon sign flickering while we talked about everything we were afraid to say in daylight. She wanted to teach school someday. "I don't want to leave," she'd say. "I want to make this place better." I wanted to see what was beyond the county line. Not because I hated home, but because something inside me felt unfinished. The first crack between us came the night I told her about the job in Chicago. "It's just for a year," I said. "Maybe 2. She didn't argue. That was Anna's way. She'd go quiet instead, folding her hands in her lap like she was rearranging thoughts. "And what happens to us?" she asked softly. "We write," I said. "We visit." She nodded, but I saw the doubt flicker across her face. 2 weeks later, I learned something that changed everything. My father's doctor told us the truth he'd been holding back. The treatments might buy time, but not much. My mother stood there twisting her purse strap, eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. That night, I drove out to the old railroad bridge where Anna and I sometimes sat with our feet dangling over the creek. "He's not going to get better," I told her. She reached for my hand immediately. "Then don't go," she said. It should have been simple. Love on one side. Duty on the other. But here's the thing about being young, you don't always recognize which choice is braver. "If I stay," I said, "I'll work the line at the plant. I'll watch him fade. And then what? I'll still be here." With nothing changed. She looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face. Maybe staying is the change, she whispered. The train horn pulled me back to that platform in 69. Anna stepped away as the conductor called for boarding. I wanted to tell her I'd changed my mind. That I'd stay. That love was enough. Instead, I climbed aboard. Chicago swallowed me whole. The air smelled like steel and rain off Lake Michigan. The factory floor thundered from dawn to dusk, and I rented a narrow room above a laundromat where the walls vibrated with the hum of machines. I wrote to Anna every Sunday evening, careful letters about work, about the noise, about how much I missed the sound of crickets. Her replies came faithfully at first. Pages filled with details about her students, about my father's condition, about the way Main Street looked under autumn leaves. She ended each letter the same way: "Come home when you're ready." Then, one November afternoon, a thinner envelope arrived. She'd been offered a teaching position in Columbus. "I didn't plan on leaving," she wrote. "But I can't wait forever." I read that line until the words blurred. Jealousy crept in like a slow draft. Not of another man, though I feared that too, but of a future that might not include me. I told myself I was doing this for us, for stability, for something larger. But the truth was, I had begun to like the feeling of proving myself somewhere new. Christmas came and I didn't go home. Overtime at the factory paid extra, and I told myself the money mattered more than a holiday. On Christmas Eve, I walked past a diner glowing warm against the snow and heard "I'll Be Home for Christmas" drifting through the door. I stood there longer than I should have. In February, a telegram arrived. My father had taken a turn for the worse. I packed my bag that night. The bus ride back to Ohio felt endless. Fields rolled by in gray silence, and I watched my reflection in the window like it belonged to someone else. I made it home 2 days before he passed. He looked smaller in that hospital bed, hands resting lightly on the blanket. "You still chasing something?" he asked when I sat beside him. "I think so." He nodded faintly. "Just make sure you know what it is." After the funeral, I went looking for Anna. Her parents' house stood the same, white paint peeling near the porch steps. Her mother answered the door, eyes kind but cautious. "She's in Columbus now," she said. "Has been for a month." The ache that followed wasn't loud. It was quiet and deep. I drove back to Chicago the next week, but the city felt different. Emptier. The factory noise grated on me. I'd lost the man I'd been trying to support, and maybe the woman I loved in the process. Spring thawed into summer before I gathered the courage to take a bus to Columbus. I found her in a small brick schoolhouse, chalk dust on her fingertips, sunlight catching in her hair. When she saw me standing in the doorway, surprise flickered into something softer. "I thought you were staying," she said. I thought so too. We walked that evening through streets unfamiliar to me. She spoke about her students with a quiet pride. I told her about the hospital room, about my father's last words. "I don't want to chase something just to prove I can," I admitted. "I want to build something." She stopped under a street lamp, the light turning her eyes gold. "And where do you want to build it?" she asked. It was the same question she'd asked in different words years before. "With you," I said. But life rarely untangles so neatly. She had signed a year's contract. I still had obligations in Chicago. Pride lingered between us, thin but present. So we tried again, letters, weekend visits, long-distance calls that crackled and faded. It wasn't easy. There were misunderstandings. Nights when one of us felt more alone than we admitted. Moments when I wondered if love stretched too thin might tear. Then came the final turn. In the fall of 1971, she wrote to say she'd been offered a permanent position in Columbus, and that she'd turned down another proposal. I read that twice, heart pounding. I realized, her letter said, that I don't want the safe choice. I want the true one. I took the first bus south the next morning. We married in a modest ceremony that winter, not in our hometown but in the small church near her school. A few friends. Simple vows. Snow falling outside like a quiet blessing. We eventually returned to Ohio years later, when the factory reopened under new management and the town began to breathe again. We bought a small house with a porch wide enough for 2 rocking chairs. She taught for 30 years. I worked until my hands grew stiff and my hair turned white. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't at 19 on that train platform. Love isn't proven by staying or leaving alone. It's proven by returning. By choosing again and again, even after pride, distance, and fear have had their say. Anna once told me that summer nights were her favorite because they felt suspended, not quite day, not quite dark. I think young love is like that too. Suspended between what you are and what you might become. If I had stepped off that train in 1969, maybe we would have married sooner. Maybe we would have avoided the ache. But I might have spent a lifetime wondering who I could have been. Instead, I learned that love can wait, not forever, not without cost, but long enough for a man to grow into it. And every time I hear a distant train whistle on a warm evening, I remember the way she kissed me before I left, and how close I came to losing the very thing that shaped my life. Some departures aren't endings. They're the long road back to where your heart always meant to stay.